Today I thought I would paint this farmhouse. I took this picture some time ago, and the house was up on a little hill, so I couldn't see any tree line behind it, so it seemed really desolate, really isolated by itself. So I thought this would be kind of a fun one to do and do it fairly simple. And just to counterbalance it a little bit, I put a few trees off here to the right, but I wanted that feeling of loneliness. So let's get started here. First of all, I think I'm going to talk to you about the materials I'm using. My paints are a combination. It's American Journey, which is Cheap Joe's brand, and also Da Vinci. I use those quite a bit. And there's a blue I've been using quite a bit lately. It's called Horizon Blue, and that's by Hobson, and I really like that also. The palette I'm using is called Miller's Workhouse, and that's available at Cheap Joe's. It comes with a top that seals down on it. It comes with a lid, and this is a good size. It gives you a pretty good sized working area. Plus it has the cover and another insert for if you need bigger mixing areas. But ideally, before I started painting, I always get my sprayer out, and I'll mist my paints so they're soft, and I'll mist them several times during the day also. The paper I'm using here is by Strathmore. It's their Series 400, 140-pound cold press. It's a good student grade paper. It takes all the different watercolor techniques. And why I suggest this for my students is because it's not very expensive, but it really holds up well. Most of the time though, when I paint for myself, I'll use Arches rough or Arches cold press papers. And those are also 140-pound. I've got several brushes I'm going to use. These are by Creative Mark. They're called the Harmony Squirrel Quill Brush. And I've got a number 6 and a number 4. And these are really great. You'll see the purpose for these. They come in really handy. I'm also going to use a 10 round brush, maybe a 6 round brush. And then for some little fine detail like the trees, I'll use this little script brush. And this is just a number 1 script brush. When it's wet, it makes a nice sharp point. But there's not going to be a lot of detail in here at all, except for the trees. I thought I'd start here by putting in a little bit of a indication of the sky without having it be too important, because I do want this to feel really kind of lonely. So I'm taking my Horizon Blue with my number 6 mop brush, and I'm just throwing some values in here. Just a hint. What I'll do now is I'll take my round brush, and just to get rid of some of these hard edges, I'll come in here and sweep it off to the edge. Just soften some of those edges. Like that's pretty strong right there. So let's just soften that. And I'll do the same on the other side over here. Let's just kind of get away from any hard edges. Remember, your watercolor is going to dry about 20–30% lighter, so I'm going to add a little more blue in here. And that comes with practice. You'll learn that certain colors, you'll learn that the watercolors in general will dry light on you. So make sure you get enough pigment with your water. So I'm going to go to, right now I'm going to go to a number 6. And I'm going to throw in that roof line on the right side. And I'm going to take the Horizon Blue by Holbein. I'm going to throw that roof right in here. And I'm going to go right across to the other side too. And then later I'll make the left side of the roof darker. This is a number 6 round brush. And you don't have to buy sable brushes. There are a lot of good synthetic brushes available. The roof is going to go really dark right here, so I don't want this the roof on the porch to go too dark in value. So I'm actually going to keep a white on the left-hand side. That way I'll have nice contrast between the shadow side and the sunlit side. So while those are drying, I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray with just a hint of the horizon blue in it. I'm going to paint in the shadows cast by this overhanging roof right here. I might end up going darker with this shadow, but let's just see what happens. I took a dryer to this to speed it up, and so it's dry now. And let's go on to the other side of the roof here that's going to be in shadow. And now I'm going to go a little darker with that. So you can see I use quite a bit of water. That way I don't have a lot of dry brush. I don't want it to have that tired, overworked look to it. So I keep it what I call nice and juicy. A lot of water with my pigment. Go back to my Payne's Gray with a little bit of the ultramarine in it, ultramarine blue, and paint this area just underneath the overhanging roof. All right, I'm gonna go darker underneath here. I knew I would have to, but let's just do it right now. I'm seeing this going a little bit lighter than I want. So what I did is I added just a touch of Payne's Gray with my ultramarine blue. So now that'll have the contrast and the value that I'm looking for. Let's put the chimney in. Burnt sienna. I'm going to do both sides of the chimney the same value, and then when it dries, I'll go a little darker on the right side, the shadow side. This is ultramarine blue with a little Payne's Gray. I want to make sure that's dark enough. I got it a little too thick, so I'm going to thin that down a little bit. Or if I need to put a little bit of a light colored, light value frame around that window, I can do that opaquely after I put the side of the house in. I'm going to take the burnt sienna. I'm going to add just a little bit of my ultramarine blue that's on my palette with it. And that way I can go a little darker on the right side of the chimney. And I'm looking at it, and it's about the same color as the roof itself. So I'm just going to take this brush and just pull some of the color out so I can see the definition between the roof and the chimney. This is my #1 script brush. Now, if I want to give some indication of the shingles on the roof, I found a good way to do that is I'm going to take a little darker value of that blue and use a sticky note. Sticky notes are really quite helpful here. But rather than try to do the indication of the shingles and trying to put my brakes on right here, I can make nice fast strokes. So let's just try this. First of all, I don't start up here and work my way down. I think a great way to start is just start in the middle. Then divide that in quarters. Then you can go back and throw a few more in if you like. Another tool that comes in handy for the times you really do need a straight line or want a straight line is I've just used this 5-gallon paint stirring stick. It's really convenient when you need a delicate straight line. Just kind of keep it up at about a 45-degree angle. keep the brush against this, ride your fingers on top, and just make those nice straight strokes. I took a little darker version of that blue and just to give us indication of a few individual shingles on here. Again, I can do the same thing right down on the roof of the porch. Since I'm not going all the way across, I don't need to divide it into halves and quarters. Just a random pattern of indicating shingles. I'm looking at that chimney and it just doesn't look right to me. I'm going to push the red a little bit more in this. And just kind of move this brush around and loosen up the color I had underneath. Then maybe just pull some of that out, but leave more of a reddish tint to that. That's, other than the trees, that's pretty much all we're going to do to it. And I think I'll wait on the trees till the end. Let's see what happens when I lay all these colors in here and then decide where to place those trees. So I'm going back to my, I'm going to go to my number 6 mop brush. And I'm going to mix up some strong colors. I'm going to get in there with ultramarine blue, maybe some Payne's gray or Prussian blue. I want to get a nice dark color. And I want to make sure I mix up several puddles so I don't have to try to recreate the color if I run out. And I'll test that on my test sheet. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to do another puddle where I'm going to mix up some orange, cadmium orange. And some of these colors I'm going to lay in fairly opaque, actually. I'm going to also mix up a little puddle of Gamboge, which is more of a yellow orange. And I'll probably have to add to these puddles, but right now I just wanted you to see how I'm starting this. And I'm going to take cadmium red too and create a puddle of that. And also a puddle of phthalo blue. Very intense blue. And you can see that in here where I've taken Gamboge, shifts into a little orange, into the reds. You really get the phthalo blue in here, which is a real shocking blue. So, and I'm going to let these colors just kind of mix together. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this what I call juicy, keep it juicy. I'm going to start with the house. And you can see I've got a puddle on here, and that's what I want. So there's a bead of paint and water at the bottom down here. That way it stays active. I don't have to worry about it giving me hard edges that I don't want. I'm going to drag this color underneath this overhang. So I'm going to keep this going. This side of the house and this side of the house all together. I want this dark color to flow all the way through these dark shadow areas. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to also, now this porch is going to be in shadow underneath the area of the porch. So let's just let all these colors run together. Keep this puddle going. I want to keep a puddle right here, nice and juicy. This number 6 brush, it makes a pretty good point, so it allows me to get in here pretty easily. I could go to a smaller brush, but this puts more paint down and keeps the puddles there. Now, if it doesn't make a good point, that means I just got to drag it against my scrap paper here and get rid of some of the excess water in it, and then it'll make a nice sharp point. Okay. If I get one of these posts too thin, like I just did right there, I can go back opaquely and fix that afterwards. So all those sides all run together, which looks really nice. I'm going to go in and grab some of the Gamboge that I mixed up. Going pretty opaque with it. Here's some orange in here. Here's where I like to put in the phthalo blue. It's just a shocking blue. When you use phthalo, you got to use it kind of carefully. And you want to make sure that if you put that in at night, but it needs to be on the focal point or close to the focal point, because that's where the eye is going to go. It's going to go to an intense color like that. I'm just going to run the shadows off this way. I'm even going to throw in a little sap green in right into this area. Again, I'll take you back to the original here. I'm going to go to my number 10 round brush. I want to get in here a little more opaque, so I'm using less water and dropping in a lot of color, a lot of pigment. Now I'm looking right in here and I'm seeing that's a little lighter than I want it to. So I'm going to take my blue that I initially used and I'm going to add a little more Payne's gray to it. And the tops of these posts will be in shadow too, because they're just underneath that porch roof. So I can definitely run all the way across and create that indication of a shadow. Okay, that's a little stronger. I want this to have a lot of impact, strong contrast. Okay, Gamboge, cadmium orange. Stronger orange because it's going over top that blue. A little cadmium red. So it's a matter of going back and forth, watching the colors, watching the values. This side is going to be a little lighter. The light's coming from our left and coming across. Back into the Gamboge, very opaque. It's almost thick in certain spots here. And that's only because I'm going over a dark area and I want to show up. I can actually pull some color out here if I want that phthalo blue to stand out a little bit more. like right in here, maybe pull a little of that color out. And the blue that's underneath, that's partially dry, is coming right through. And I'll clean up, if I get a lot of water, a lot of paint on the tape, I'll pick that up. Because if I let it dry like that, it's going to creep back into the painting and create blossoms on the edge of your painting. I haven't used any phthalo green yet. That's a nice color too, along with the phthalo blue. I put some sap green in here, but let's just put some phthalo green in. Now obviously we don't want, this is too distracting right here, what's happening in this spot. So I can take my brush, kind of sweep it out of there. And I can go back and throw some more Gamboge in there if I like. So we got a little detail where you have to kind of take your time, get some nice clean strokes. And the rest of it is just playing around. It's just having some fun. Okay, I'd like to see a little more blue in here. So I'm just going to take my damp brush and just pull some of that dark color out of there. That was the ultra and some phthalo, but it also had little panes in it. So I want to see that phthalo pop a little bit more. So I got the dark out of there, the area that had some panes in it. So let's just throw some more phthalo in there. Phthalo, that's phthalo blue. So I got phthalo green, phthalo blue, and then I'm getting into all my warm colors. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry it just a little bit, and then we'll do some splattering on it. Okay, it's still damp, but it's starting to dry a little bit. So I'm going to go into my cadmium orange, a little bit of red with it, cad red. I'm just going to come in here and splatter some of that into these areas that are damp. And if you splatter where you don't want, don't panic. Just kind of tap it out. And I've still got my puddle of my dark color that I used on the side of the house. So I can go in there, if I got some splatter up where I don't want it, I can just kind of go in there and lay some pigment in. All right, I'm just going to go straighten up a few lines. Now this wouldn't be pure white on the shadow side. And it's actually filled in on me here, but let's just kind of take that color and just put a little value on it so it doesn't jump out at us so much. And the same thing right here. But you see, I've gone back here several times because I think I've got it dark enough, but it's not. That's why it takes practice. You have to learn, just learn to get your paints dark enough so that when they dry, they have the impact that you want. I'm going to take some Payne's Gray. And it may not even show up, or it might show up a little bit. Let's just throw a little bit of indication of the shingles. And I'm going straight Payne's Gray now. Oh, I even picked up a little of the orange in there. And I don't actually mind that. I'm going to leave that in. I didn't put it in the original, but it might be kind of nice to have some lightning rods on here. I actually kind of like that little bit of orange and red that got in there by accident. I think I'm going to kind of play with that. You have to be willing to make changes or adjustments. as you paint, as you go along. Okay, let's put some of these trees in, and then we'll do a little more detail on the building. Once this is dry, we can give some slight indication of siding on the roof. And I'll put a little white accent or two here and there, maybe. We'll see what we need. But let's put some trees in. I'm going to take some burnt umber, but I'm going to mix it with the Payne's Gray and the ultramarine blue that's already on my palette. I don't want the trees to be brown, which sometimes people have a tendency to do. I want it to be a dark color, but I don't want it to be like straight burnt umber. Let's try that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rest my hand on here so I can keep the branches as thin as I want. Let's just put one right here. I use what's called a stutter stroke. If I'm afraid of getting my hand in here, I'll wait and do this later. I think I can stay out of my way here. I'll put another one over here, a little thicker, sort of like the reference piece that I showed you. I'm going to add a little water to my color and have these trees back here a little lighter in value because they're farther away. And these will be smaller ones too. So I just added water to my initial tree color here. Just a suggestion, we don't want to overdo it here. Okay, now I'm going to go to my number 6 round brush. And I'm going to take some of this cadmium orange I had down here, and I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to it, so it's not quite so bright. And I'm going to dilute it a little bit, and again, get in here close. And just give a little indication of some leaves that haven't fallen yet. Let's dry this. Okay, that's pretty dry now. Okay, I'm going to go back to my little sticky note here and just throw a little light value indication of the siding. Just one of my darker colors, then I'm just going to dilute it. And always have a paper towel ready. If you go too dark, you can tap it out. I'm going to go right across that window. This is just a fun little study here. Just a slight indication. And I'll do a little bit in here too. Now that may not even show up on the camera, but in person you can see that. All right, let's just take my titanium white and go in here and get these posts a little neater looking. This is just straight titanium white. I think I'm going to actually take some I'm actually going to take some of my horizon blue that I used on the base color on its roof, and I'm going to add some white to it and just give another value to that side of the roof. Not white, but just a little bit lighter. It looks like it's going to dry a little washed out. So let me just add a little more color to it. A little more white, I should say. And just kind of skip around and just give another dimension to that roof. And I think that does it. That's good. All right, I didn't put any birds in my original one, but it's hard for me to not put birds in a painting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some birds flying behind this house. And since I'm left-handed, I'm not going to do the birds here first and then accidentally smear them as I come across. So I'm going to start over here. This is my little script brush. And maybe one right there. And then I'm going to have a few that over here that haven't quite caught up to the rest of the group. And that's it. Thanks for watching.